problem where? Look good to me.
Let's talk about train derailment.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ride and Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's episode. We had an incident recently. Wasn't a big one. So this is kind of like a reaction video to it, but at the same time, education. So I wanted to talk about this. Over there at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, we had the Harley Quinn crazy train kind of derail. Wasn't a full derailment, but we had one coach come back in above the track. So I got some pictures sent to me. So this first picture right here is basically the station, and you can tell in the lower left-hand corner here there's some damage of where the wheel carrier basically hit that. These stations are carved out right here at the end that allows the wheel carriers to pass right underneath. But in this case, the wheel carrier was in top, so it came around and it hit that and took out some wood as it went back down into the station. This is a Zaire large Tavali coaster. I've got experience with these things. In fact, it's pretty much the exact same model that I used to take care of, minus the train design. Still 20 coaches, but mine was shaped differently than this one was, but that's not a big deal. Here is another view of the station. This was actually taken on ride from people. This particular one comes to me from Comet Coasters IG, which I believe that's Instagram. So Comet Coasters, I got these two photos, that last one and this one, from these guys. And it's the same thing. It's a straightforward shot. You can't see it that well, but there's a coach right down here midway. I believe it was the third or fourth coach back that has actually derailed. And it's just really not much to look at. It's just sitting there kind of crooked. The email I got along with those pictures is actually an account of the story of the train derailing there. So this is actually pretty good, so I wanted to read it. On 11/30/24, me and some friends were at Six Flags Great Adventure, and we were riding the Harley Quinn crazy train at 4 p.m. First lap, everything was normal, but on the second lap, like around the third or the fourth to last turn, I heard something weird. Something started vibrating a lot, and when I started looking around and saw under the third car of the train started sparking against the rail of the track, and then on the second to last turn, saw the wheel assembly completely not on the rails like it's supposed to, but still attached to the car, but it looked like almost 90 degrees to the track. And the car was clearly only being held on by the car in front and behind it because it was moving left and right again, the track bouncing around. And when it came back to the station, the wheel assemblies at the same 90-degree angle smashed into the wood platform. That was the damage we just looked at of the station, causing the wood to break and shoot off in different directions. Ride ops did everything they were supposed to do, hit the e-stop, called for help instantly. Part of the train I was in was still outside the station because the train didn't advance all the way into the station. When maintenance and other personnel arrived, without looking at the train much, we're going to start to move the train forward into the station. And me and my friends said to them, no check first? Then they got to move the train in the station as normal and got everyone off. The third car was still clearly not completely on the rails. Okay, completely on the rails. So let's talk about the actual incident really quick, and then I'm going to go into, so there's a lot of questions about how this happens, and it actually happens on these particular roller coasters, the I-beam Zaire coasters, which is most of the Zaire coasters. It actually happens fairly easy with them. It's nothing super crazy catastrophic. It can actually just be a handful of minor little adjustments that come out of place that allows this to happen. But I'll go into that in a little bit of detail. So one of the first things when they came back in, they noticed the wheel carrier was off. Well, that's typical with a derailed train. Most of the time it will just knock the one wheel carrier off the track, assuming that there's something okay with the wheel carrier, as in, like, a lot of times when you look at carnival rides and things like that completely derailed where the coach has actually come off of the track, it's because wheel carriers have broken. The wheel carrier is the highest stress component in the train almost, and it's taking all that side left to right load up and down and everything else. So it's under a tremendous amount of stress. So when they go bad, they don't just go bad a little bit, they tend to crack and fissure and separate and come open, and that allows all the guide wheels and everything to come away, which allows for more tolerance, which allows it to jump the rails and things like that. But I don't think that's the case of what happened here. Basically, because of what he said there was a vibration. It sounded like a vibration and a thumping happening on the track at that like third to last corner. So that vibration, those wheels on that train, they're nylon wheels. So that vibration tells me that there is a problem with the wheels. Okay, I'm going to get into a bit of this. Let me just kind of skip forward here just a second. All right, the last thing is the maintenance got there. Everyone was still loaded. Train's out of the back of the station. That means it's not in the home position. And maintenance basically just opened the brake and let them back in the rest of the way. And they were like, you don't want to check anything first? That ride, it's pretty easy to tell what's going on. Okay, it's also very clear since everyone's right there. If anyone is in any sort of immediate danger, actually would have happened on the entry of the station. So no one was in danger. So they simply just said, well, it's not in the home position, needs to be in the home position, so let's just go ahead and open the brakes and let the train drift into the home position. And that's what they did. I put my key in, turn it into manual mode, and I hit open station brakes and let the train just drift in the rest of the way. No big deal there. People also get that a lot with irregular cars out on the road. They get into a minor fender bender where they just might be messed the bumper up a little bit, or damaged the quarter panel or something like that. People's reaction is to, well, I have to have the car towed to a shop now. It's like, actually, no, that car still works just fine. You can just get in it, drive it off the side of the road, do something else. As long as the wheel's not hanging off, you're pretty much okay, because the first thing it does when it gets to the body shop and they tow it into the body shop, because I used to work at a body shop, the first thing we do is get in the car, start it up, and drive it where we need to go. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. But a lot of people think like something immediately has to happen. And unless there's a problem that's involving where the passengers are sitting, like that coach was completely turned sideways on its end and people were hanging off to the side, yeah, nothing's really happening there. On the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a major problem, death is involved, and 1 being like nothing really at all, this is about a 3. That's realistically all this is. There's probably even no major damage to it, probably just an evening worth of work and a couple of repairs and some checks, and it might be back up and running the next day. If the question is if we got into NDT or non-destructive testing, if we get into any of that stuff where NDT is in question, then it's going to be down longer because of that. But I mean, like if I had a question on our particular model, like, oh, I think the wheel carrier might have been messed up and I want to get it NDT, well, that's fine. We had tons of wheel carriers in stock. We just go grab a handful of new ones and put them back on the train. Call it good. I know when you hear the term, the train derailed, a lot of people think about a picture like this, where it's just like, oh, the whole train has come off, everything is all messed up. This is a bad train derailment. This is an actual train, obviously. So this is, yeah, a really bad thing. But this is typically not what roller coaster trains look like when they derail. Here we go. This was sent to me by a different person. This one's much more cryptic because it's out of the ride area. It's looking through trees and stuff. But if you look in really carefully right here, you can see the platform, and then you can see that this is that third-ish coach that they were talking about. See, it's really not much. It's actually only up about 5 or 6 inches, leaning to the one side. Really not much going on there. That's why I would come in as a mechanic and look at that like, oh, let me open the brakes, roll it in, okay. Once everyone's off, I'm just like, well, it's already been running like that, so let's just go ahead and move the train forward and put it out into the inspection area, which is just ahead of where the station is. As soon as it comes out of the station, makes a left-hand turn, that's where the inspection area is right there. So we just go ahead and move it to right there, and then we'll lock it out and we'll take a look at what's going on, what happened, what failed, what's this, what's that. I've had similar derailments on the Tavali coaster that I worked on, because we've had things like a bushing came apart, and the wheel carriers are spaced left to right to make the proper gauge with a set of bushings and shims and things like that that hold it in there. So I've had things break where that dimension suddenly changed, and I've also had it happened a handful of times with the part closed, because I had a handful of times brand new mechanics started working on it, and they forgot for that particular piece of equipment that the shim packs were exact between the outside and the inside, and when they changed wheels and did things like that, it changed the gauge and shim dimensions and all that other sort of stuff. It was one of those things where the experienced mechanic left, and they asked the inexperienced guy just to finish up. So the inexperienced guy finished up and then decided to run it. Then we had a problem afterwards. And then someone like me had to be called down there, and I'm like, what'd you learn? Okay, yeah, what'd you learn? All right, yep, nope, you can't. You got to remember, when you change anything with the wheels, the guide wheels on one of these coasters, you have to recheck everything. I don't think that was the case here at all. So let's look at how one of these Zaire coasters is set up, and let's get into the topic of derailment. So first of all, this is the Zaire track, pretty much the way it is. There is they're basically I-beams. This is what the road wheels run on, and then there's a cross tie. That's the tie between the track pieces. That's that. There's really not much to these at all. In fact, when you weld stuff together, you typically use 70-18 rod, which is 70,000 psi tensile strength rod. Sorry, that's the welder in me. It's a strong rod. The Tavali coasters actually require 60-13, like you would be welding something together in your garage. Really strange, but yeah, that's what those are. Okay, this image is basically, this is how it looks with the coach on the track. So what we have here is we'll have the guide. These are dual purpose wheels here. These both guide the train left and right, and see how they're underneath the I-beam right there. These also, the guide wheels, act as an upstop wheel at the same time. And then you have your road wheels and the axle that stretches between the two wheels, the two wheel carriers, to hold everything in place. So this is a typical Zaire coaster, Tavali coaster. This is what they look like. This is how everything is put together. Now, our particular little Harley Quinn coaster out there, I think what happened is basically they lost a guide wheel on one side. Not sure which side it was. This example, I'm just going to use this because it kind of manifests itself in different ways depending on how the train is running. But by lost, I mean they're in a pocket. They can't really, like, here's a guide wheel like this sitting on the side, right? They're inside of the pocket of the wheel carrier, so they can't like fall out. But there is enough out there where you can break part of the wheel away, and you could basically turn this into half a wheel. The wheels are just nylon material. They're not polyurethane, they're not aluminum hubs, they're simply nylon. So that material can wear and could start to crack, and then it will just fracture and then snap when it's out on the track. Kind of a really odd thing for nylon to do. It has to be very old, but we don't know the condition of those wheels. So I'm going to say that a wheel probably fractured, broke, chunked out, snapped in half. If it snapped completely in half at the bearing bore, then yeah, you could eject the entire wheel, because one half could just fall out and the other half can turn and then fall out as well. So you could do something like that. So I believe they lost one wheel, or part of a wheel, on one side. Now with the lack of that guide wheel right there, that frees up the train to move left and right. In every case of a train derailing, you need excessive play left to right for some reason. That's how all train derailments start. Everyone always thinks it's like the track opened up and everyone just flew off the end. But no, that's typically not it. It is excessive play left to right for some reason. Something changed, something broke, something snapped, something fell off, and now you have excessive left to right play. And so this is what I think happened here. Basically, It moved all the way to one side. That allowed this train to come over this way. And you see, once the train comes over like that and it gets in this little pocket right there, you see this guide wheel over on this side. It's kind of almost off the track. Like, there's not too much with those I-beam styles. There's not too much sticking underneath the lip of that I-beam. The I-beam's not huge either. We're talking that I-beam to the track is only about a 20 millimeter lip. That is it, that little tiny space. So that's it. We've had another one, a Flash kid coaster, also derailed in the same exact fashion. All right, so like I said, sorry I got interrupted. Like I said, once you get this wheel out over here, it pretty much wants to come out of the track anyway. And then that's typically what happens. High load and stress, the train tilted really far to one side. It just allows that wheel to kind of shimmy and walk itself out. And then once it's off the track, it doesn't have much place to go from there. It pretty much gets on top. Now, if there was nothing else in front of or behind it, so if this was the worst train derailments you see are typically, it's either the lead car or the tail car that derail. Those are the worst ones. Why? Because the way this one did it, like number 3, when it jumps up on top of the track, like it's done right here, there's really nowhere for it to go. Like the person said in the email, it was connected to coach number 2 in front of it, and the rest of the train, coach 5 or 4 and back, was holding on to it. So it was pretty much in line. Honestly, those coaches, you could take the wheel carriers off of both sides. It'll spark, it'll bang, it'll make a ton of noise. It might violently stop. It's going to stay on the track, though, because it's got nowhere to go. The last coach, if you do this on the last coach, it can come off the track completely because there's nothing behind it holding it. And then it can fall to the side and twist with people in it. And then that would be pretty much deadly at that point if it fell to the side and twist. If you see big train derailments that happens at older carnival rides and stuff like that, it's rare. This is a very rare thing. It doesn't happen all the time. It's one of people's biggest fears, honestly. People are like, the train's going to derail and I'm going to fall off the track. It is people's biggest fear, but it doesn't hardly ever happen. Even when I was trying to look for some pictures to show of a train derailment, they were actually pretty hard to find. And the ones I did find, I found a lot of traveling stuff, which there's some safety concerns with a lot of traveling things out there too. In the middle, you're just going to have it. It's just going to sit up on top of the track like that. It's not a big deal. It's going to mess up some things, maybe damage some stuff. You might have to replace some things, but you fix whatever the root cause was, whether the wheel carrier broke, shims fell apart, maintenance guys left something loose accidentally, and then you get the ride back up and running. That rear car, it can go south really fast, so that's a dangerous one. The same thing with the lead car. The lead car is even worse because it can fall off the track as well, like swing to one side, but then you have that entire weight of that train pushing that now sideways, and that can crumple and fold itself back around towards other coaches. Really bad news there. So that is not great. Okay, let me see if I get back into this video. I had to stop and go pick up my truck from service. So it's back now. Yay! Everything's working again. Awesome. Alright, so where did I leave off? Let's see. Covered Harley Quinn. Talked about how the type of Zaire coaster can derail using the wheel carrier style where it doubles the guide wheel as a upstop wheel. So what are some safeties that manufacturers try to use when they keep trains from derailing? Well, one of the things is the actual design of the wheel carrier itself. The Zaire model would have the same problem, that they're open and they have double duty wheels on the bottom, which means that those wheels become the critical failure point. If those wheels come apart, I'm not talking about delamination of like normal wear. I'm talking about catastrophic failure, like a wheel cracks and breaks in half. The thing can't stay on the track. So let's look at a model like this one. This is basically what a B&M looks like from the backside. So if we're looking at it here, the coach is this upper area right here. It's got the bearings for the wheel carrier pivots right here. The gray section is the wheel carrier, and the reds, again, you have the up stops, you have the guides, and you have the road wheels, and then the track's blue in the center. I know it's not shaped like a B&M track, it's the example. So what's the safety involved with this? Well, here's the fun part about a B&M, and Intamins do this as well. I mean, there's a lot of coaster manufacturers that do this exact same principle. Here is that exact same setup, but now I've removed the road, guide, and upstop wheels. So this has no wheels on it whatsoever. You notice anything? So right, the wheel carriers are the safety. The wheel carriers are actually shaped that way around the track. So even with no wheels, it stays on the track, which is pretty cool. I've always told people when they gave tours and stuff like that, I was like, a fun fact about these rides, we were looking at a B&M ride, it's like, fun fact about this, you could take all the wheels off and send this over the top of the lift hill. It won't make it very far, but it will stay on the track. A lot of people's misconception is that if you lose a wheel, the train flies off the track. The majority of rides, that's not the case. I've manipulated this a little bit. You can see here that I've adjusted the frame onto the track to say like this would be going around a corner. And you can see the wheel carrier is actually rubbing on the bottom of the track here on this side, and it's rubbing on the top and inside corner there. That's to show you that any way you try to take that frame and pull it off, the thing can't come off of there. Most tracks these days are used this style where it's the rails on the outside and cross ties in the center. And this is one of the great features about that. You can do this process right here and mechanically lock the train into the track. Now, this is a pain in the butt when you're trying to recover a valley train, because the only way to do that is to remove the wheel carrier from the coach, and then you can slide it off one side and actually take the coach out. Okay, so let's look at an example of like a Aero / Vekoma and see what they have in them. So what we're looking at in this particular picture, this is the top-down view. If you're looking at from the top, the aerial view down on the track. What we're seeing here is the black main part in the center is what would be considered the main axle housing, depending on the ride. These little black pieces going straight up and down, these would be the wheel carriers, and then these red wheels, these red spots on here are the wheels. Now, the thing about Vekomas is that for a lot of stuff, they put either the upstop or a safety piece out here that projects away from the wheel carrier, and that's in case they had the roads or upstops break. The thing is still kind of shaped, not quite like that C, but it's kind of something similar. There's pieces to keep it on the track. So you can actually see these on some of their designs, but they're not that easy to point out unless you're zoomed in taking a picture of that thing specifically. And then it's like, oh yeah, the SLC between the two road wheels, there's a little bar sticking out. It's like that bar, that's the safety in case the road wheel breaks off. What I've done here is I put this in this direction away from the track rails so you could see those safeties sticking out on both sides. And then the next one I'll show is with the rails put where they're supposed to be. This is what the assembly looks like all together now. So it looks the exact same thing. Notice the blue rails are closer to the red wheels now because most Aero Vekomas use a slight gap, an air gap between them to help guide. But the black safety piece doesn't look different, but if you look underneath, it's actually underneath the rail. So in case the road wheels broke off, it didn't come completely out of the track. So let's see what happens if we remove some wheels. Then you can twist the frame. Typically, the act of losing a guide wheel isn't enough to derail the train. Like if you completely broke or let a guide wheel fall off, that's typically not enough to actually derail the train. There needs to be some sort of excessive side-to-side twisting motion that starts that process, because what you have to do is you have to turn that main axle housing one way or the other to get it to kind of twist and then get into the track to where it can come out. So this picture here, what I've done is I've twisted the main axle housing in there to show you that when I do that, This is typically the way the train guides as it goes down the track. This guide wheel, here's direction of motion going straight up and down. The guide wheel on the left rear is touching the rail. The same with the guide wheel on the right front is touching the rail. That allows the axle housing to twist, but it still goes straight. Rides with air gaps like the old Arrows, old Vekomas, where they used an air gap on there, this is where that hunting starts to become excessive and it starts drifting from left to right on straight pieces of track. The Zaire coaster that derailed earlier, that's no exception for that. It also has an air gap between the side of the I-beam and the guide wheels. So it also is subject to hunting as it goes down the track as well. Now for this one, what I've done is I've removed the 2 red dots, removed the guide wheels in opposite corners, which is your worst case scenario. And you can see you can now actually twist the thing. I actually just rotated the image and twisted it enough to where that the safeties are now outside of the rails. You see, you have those safeties exposed. So this is what you would have to do to get the coach out of the track. I've looked at taking a coach apart and actually dropping it down in place while it was in the station. And that's what we had to do. We had to remove all the guide wheels so we could twist the main axle housing enough. And even then, the way the safeties are around the track, we had to play this Tetris game of rotating wheel carriers and lifting and turning and everything until we eventually got the wheel carriers 180 degrees apart from each other and we're able to actually get it down out of the track. Not an easy or a quick process, but when things are running, they happen a little bit quicker because there's a lot more force involved. But I just kind of wanted to make this illustration to show you that this is kind of what would happen in those scenarios. If you lost a set of guide wheels on opposite corners, the whole thing can twist into the track and then fall. Now, a lot of rides won't do this because by the time that axle housing twists that far, it's hitting part of the coach. It physically, the axle housing can't rotate like that because it's going to hit something else. So a lot of times there's mechanical bind involved that won't even allow it to get to this situation. Some accidents we've had in the past, typically it's something like a wheel carrier or something comes off the ride. The rides that this is prone to happening, where this, like I've seen recently accidents. When I was looking into this, it's like I've seen accidents pop up where it was that Zaire or that Schwarzkopf style where they had the multi-duty guide upstop wheels where the carrier wasn't wrapped around the housing all the way. Like those are more susceptible to big failures, but they're still completely safe. But it's one of those things, like when those things pop up in the news, it's like, yeah, it's something along those lines. I'm not saying those manufacturers, but it's something along those lines of wheel carriers that typically have the trouble. What we're looking at right now is, this is the Bullet coaster, I believe it was, over in China. This one had a mechanical failure on the rollback, and this one derailed, but it derailed because of all the other circumstances out there. It was smashing through fins. It ran into a whole nother train. Like this had so many other circumstances around it. I'm not saying like this is a derailment. That's what, not at all. But this is a prime example of when something derails like this, it has to have a lot of failure. I mean, look at this wheel carrier right here. It's bent in every single direction possible. The frame is tweaked. I mean, this was not an easy thing to get that away from that rail. These rides are extremely strong, and they can't. It's not like something like, oh yeah, we hit it with a hammer and it fell off the rail. That doesn't happen. So yeah, based off the Harley Quinn coaster over there at Six Flags in New Jersey, Great Adventure, I decided to make this video. It's like, oh, I would like to talk about the Harley Quinn derailing, just because I've seen it again on Kid Flash, the little dueling coaster that, what's their name made? Who made that? I started asking that question earlier and forgot. Oh yeah, Skyline. That's one of those things, that style ride where it uses the very small little flat lip and a guide / upstop wheel to keep that on the track. It's that type of ride that they're prone to derailing easy. They're not typically catastrophic. There's not lots of injuries or anything like that involved. They simply just come out of the track, and then you have to figure out what went wrong. That exact same thing can happen just off of adjustments. Guide wheels come too far out, and someone didn't check the side-to-side motion on the train, and it's like, oh, the guide wheels are too far out of adjustment, and the thing can literally walk its way out of the track. It's typically not the whole train that does that, and those adjustments are supposed to be checked on a daily. But sometimes there's excessive wear and things like that, but it should be caught pretty early. I don't really have a lot of experience with trains derailing myself, although I have derailed the Zaire, not myself, but I mean, I've been there for that. And that's what it was, is a set of circumstances that lined up. It didn't really cause any damage. I think we just ended up replacing the 4 guide wheels for that coach after we took it all back apart and put it back together. Like, it didn't even scrape up anything, really. Because those coasters are nice and light. They're pretty much made out of sheet metal and some very light steel and some fiberglass, so there's not much weight to them. So assuming it happened late in the cycle, it's not a big deal. It typically valleys the train before anything else. Okay. It was a good topic. I figured it was a nice little video for this week. Sorry I got derailed in the middle of that there, but my train of thought came back. Let's see. Like and subscribe. Do all that stuff downstairs if this is your first time here. If you want to email me, you can email me at ryantheridemechanic@yahoo.com. And stay off the air gates. Bye.